Good evening, classmates and Professor Goldberg. This is Joy Stiles, and I'm going to present my crisis case study, which is the National Football League and domestic violence. How to destroy your brand by turning a blind eye. We have to begin by stating that the National Football League and domestic violence has always had a very tenuous relationship. The league's players and their spouses or domestic partners have had several run-ins with the law over the years within the existence of the league, the latest of which involved Josh Brown of the New York Giants, who was given a one-game suspension, which again seemed very light and rather surprising given the circumstances of the NFL within the media, thanks to the Ray Rice scandal that took place last year. In order to discuss this, we have to do a little bit of history and talk about a study that was done from 1989 to 1994, which stated there were 56 incidents of domestic violence involving the league's players. None of them received any criminal prosecution. They also did not receive any punishment within the league itself, which leads us to the Ray Rice case that took place. Ray Rice was a running back for the Baltimore Ravens who assaulted his then girlfriend, subsequently apologized on national television with his then wife a month later, and the NFL made the first mistake of blaming the victim. They actually sent out a tweet saying that she apologized for her part. Subsequently, it was found out that the NFL had information about the incident and knew how grave the injuries were that she received and did nothing about it. I propose that the NFL could have avoided this entire crisis by putting some fail-safes in place. The first being a corporate stance on domestic violence versus the culture that they have now of complacency. Creating partnerships with the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and also being fully transparent and empathetic in the midst of this crisis. While they could not control what Ray Rice and his wife participated in, they could have controlled how the brand responded. The first of this, in terms of rectification, that needed to take place was to express regret and remorse. We discussed this when we talked about emotional crisis communication in the article that we had with Vanderveer and Verhoeven. It's important for a corporation to apologize, whether or not they directly were involved, as in this case, they were not the players, but to say that they do not tolerate domestic violence in any way. The NFL failed to do that. The other thing that they failed to do was be readily accessible to the media. Seeger and Selnow said being readily accessible to the media is a best practice in regards to crisis communication. And there was no transparency. The public could not relate to what was happening with the league because they basically blamed the victim and then also threw the onus on the criminal justice system, saying that they didn't do their job and had not provided them with the proper amount of proof in order for them to discipline Ray Rice. I propose that had they created a partnership with the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, the players that were not offenders could have participated in a social media and print and television campaign with the hashtag Real Men Don't Beat Women. They could have been featured in these ads social media wise. The hashtag could have been used on Twitter, it could have been used on Instagram, and it could have actually been a page showing the partnership between the NFL and the National Coalition, where people would be able to post their stories and players could potentially respond and share how they have a stance where they value women in their life, their wives or their mothers. In addition, I believe there needed to be clear disciplinary action for these incidents. Mandatory fines coupled with community service as well as multiple game suspensions would be a great incentive for these players to avoid getting into these altercations at home. Most people do not like to be hit in the wallet. First place it could have gone. If the National Football League had taken the time to really consider their female consumers, Their female consumers are 45% of their bottom line. It was very negligent, very foolish of them not to take this into consideration when failing to communicate with the media, failing to engage the public, and let people know that they will not stand for domestic violence under any circumstance. It doesn't matter how well you catch a football or how well you throw a football. It is not allowed. It would have been very good if they had created these partnerships in order for women to know that they're valued, but also to get rid of the stigma of the boys club mentality that is associated with the National Football League. I propose that the stakeholders would have seen that the National Football League was compassionate if they had taken these steps, if there had been a true communication plan in place, if they had a clear corporate stance on domestic violence, if there had been a partnership with the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and if the commissioner, Roger Goodell, had been transparent, honest, and empathetic with the stakeholders about this situation. This crisis did not need to happen.